Hello and welcome to Ohio Stadium for the pregame show for Buckeye Huddle, pregame huddle. I think we could call it the pregame huddle. The pregame huddle for Ohio State and Toledo. I'm Tom Orr, joined by Tony Gerdeman, Kevin Noon behind the camera. He's going to be in front of the camera in a little bit because I got to run and do a little extra something. We'll get there in a little bit.
Don't call it extra. It's just something. Like you're saying, I'm going to go do extra. Like we're all working here, Tom.
Mm-hmm. So anyways, one of us is going to leave a chair in the next hour or so, and it's me. So that's exciting. Kevin will too, because he's got to come from behind the camera.
He's just going to a different chair.
Anyway, the important thing, Tony,
sorry,
is that Ohio State plays Toledo tonight. Kickoff 7:00. We have a bunch to talk about tonight. We'll have the availability report coming out in about half an hour, about 4:30. That'll come out, so we'll be able to talk about that. We'll have our usual mixture of pregame stories with Alex Glettman talking about some recruiting stuff. Kevin has a segment. I've got a pregame segment, kind of a behind-the-scenes segment for you. So we've got a lot of stuff coming up in the next hour.
You guys still won't let me do a pregame segment of my own, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've been asking so many times. So many times.
I told you, go get a historian to talk about the Toledo Award. Did you know? That could have been mine.
So your pregame segment would have been us going and doing something.
You're welcome.
Anyway, so speaking of awful things, boy, can we start with the Big Ten West? Is the Big Ten West the best non-power conference in the nation or not?
No, it's like the Sun Belt is probably better than the Big Ten West. So the AAC is certainly better than the Big Ten West. I don't know the divisions in the ACC, of course, but maybe the Atlantic or the Coastal, whichever one has Syracuse, is probably better than the Big Ten West. This is you could not wish for or write a worse ending for the start of this season for the Big Ten West. It is horrific, and even all hopes were alive with Nebraska today. Things are going to go well because Scott Frost is finally gone, and they were terrible. Purdue loses at the end. I assume they lost. Down when there were 7 seconds to go. I think we can wrap that one up. That was a loss. Minnesota is maybe the best team in the West. We'll see what Wisconsin is.
Mm-hmm.
They shouldn't have lost to Washington State, but the fact that they did last week just tells you more about the Big Ten West.
Shoulda, but you didn't. Wisconsin lost to Washington State. Nebraska lost to, everyone. You've got Illinois lost to Indiana. Indiana is currently tied in overtime with Western Kentucky. Northwestern lost today to Southern Illinois, the Salukis. Iowa lost to Iowa State last week, has scored a grand total of 1 touchdown through 2 weeks. Two games where they ended with 7. Still more safeties than touchdowns on the year. Two games in. You've got, so that's 5.
Mm-hmm.
Purdue, we mentioned, losing to Syracuse, possibly already lost to Syracuse. That's 6. And the 7th team, Indiana did win in overtime. So there you go, Indiana, the Hoosiers.
And the 7th is always the most difficult to remember because
Minnesota, yes, we talked about earlier. So they have not disgraced themselves yet. I don't think. I think they were still undefeated. They haven't lost to Bowling Green this year, but that may be because Bowling Green's not on the schedule.
Yeah, and they have a pretty terrible schedule as well. Like a lot of these teams, but it hasn't mattered.
Minnesota non-conference? What? No.
Their conference schedule is not much better.
That is true. So anyway, so Nebraska spent $7.5 million in order to lose to Oklahoma by 35 points 2 weeks earlier than they would have otherwise. And that's great. Good job.
If they would have kept Scott Frost on, at least they would have lost by 7.
That's true. Yes. That's true. Yes. And Penn State currently losing 3-0 at Auburn. Michigan, however, I don't know.
The leaders in best.
59-0 or something. Yes. Against the junior varsity from Ypsilanti High School.
I have no idea what we're going to talk about on Michigan Monday. I do not want to watch that game. I do not want to write anything about it. I don't want to have any opinions on it. And the fact that I'm going to have to is I don't want to complain about my job, but it's so pointless to talk about that game.
I have 2 words for you. Wildcat strike. I'm just saying think about it. All right. Enough Big Ten West talk. Let's talk a little Big Ten East and specifically a little Ohio State.
Sure.
The Buckeyes hosting Toledo tonight. we'll have the availability report in bottom of the hour, 4:30 or so. But it feels like, the general overall tone this week has been that they're probably getting some guys back. Maybe we'll see Jackson Smith and Jigba, Julian Fleming kind of chief among them. What is the most interesting piece of this game to you? Because I think last week we came into the game talking all about this is a chance to see all the young guys and you're going to see all the freshmen. And you saw like a couple drives of Kyle McCord, a couple drives of Dallin Hayden, but you really didn't see. We didn't have a catch from Caleb Brown. We didn't have a catch from Kojo Antwi, Caleb Burton, any of those guys. And so what going into this game, what are you kind of looking for today?
Well, if Jackson Smith and Jigba is able to go, if Julian Fleming, if those two are able to go, Ryan Day said that they would be, hoping to get them back. So if they are playing, how does the passing game look? Is it next level like we expected at the outset of the season? Or is there some rust? And how long does that rust last? So I think you've got to get them out there. You've got to see what they can do. That way you know more what to expect next week against Wisconsin and how they can handle that. Just I think watching the passing game, get that rust shaken off is what I'm going to be watching for. Now, if they're not playing time, I'm not going to watch the game.
Just take the rest of the night off. Yes, your computer may be doing that already, but we'll see that face. That's the face of someone whose computer is maybe taking the night off. It's only the second time in 3 weeks. It's probably not a pattern. It's fine. It's fine. So go on the defensive side of the ball. I feel like the conversation around the Ohio State defense has maybe changed a little bit because, after week one, it was, wow, they held a top 5 team to 10 points after, and nothing after the 5-minute mark of the second quarter. So, oh boy, they've really got this fixed. And Arkansas State, it was fine, and it was not anything incredible. It was not the greatest defensive performance in history. It was also, not anything bad. It was fine. It was kind of okay. They did what they needed to do. The run defense has been pretty good. I'm starting to wonder what we've actually seen. What has this defense actually proven? And this is not a negative reflection on them. This is a reflection of, I've watched Notre Dame play since Notre Dame left the stadium on September 3rd, and boy, howdy, I have not seen a whole lot of offense.
No, and Tom, I don't know if you recall, we did have a podcast in the days after the Notre Dame game asking, is the defense fool's gold at this point? And was it clickbaity? Who's to say? But it sounds like we need to do another one of those episodes and ask, what have we seen from the defense? Now, I still think what we've seen is an improvement because we've seen older defenses look bad against bad offenses, and they've looked good against bad to average offenses. And so you see all of the things that you should be seeing. You see players playing, complementary football, doing their jobs properly, linebackers filling, the gaps are sound, and guys are where they're supposed to be. There aren't this entire edges of the field vacated by defense. So you're seeing a sound and responsible defense, which, regardless of the opponent, is a step up.
It is a step up, and they had played some not great opponents last year and got gashed at times by them, and they have not. So this is just a little bit closer to the way we're talking about Michigan right now. With yes, they've looked good, but who have they played? And let's be real clear: Notre Dame is arguably better than UConn and Hawaii, and whoever they played the first week. Colorado State, yes. I started the process not by trying to remember who they played, but by scrolling backwards through the bottom of the sport and didn't quite get to Colorado State. But yes, that is a thing. It does feel like this is a team that's pretty good. They're I feel like you've sort of seen what you can see out of them for the most part, but they're still a little bit maybe unproven right now. We had an interesting thought experiment before we came on air regarding Notre Dame. We'll transition away from Notre Dame again, but I did want to kind of hit on this real quickly. If you were a listener of the podcast, Effectively Wild, the baseball podcast, they will have these crazy hypotheticals. And it's, a pitcher starts a game and he gives up a home run to every batter. How many batters in a row would a pitcher have to give up a home run before he would get pulled? A starter, a good starter, let me just put this out in the universe, since as a Mets fan, I can't possibly curse anything. Max Scherzer comes out and just starts giving up home runs to every batter. How many batters in a row would Max Scherzer have to give up home runs before you pulled him and said, like, hey, buddy, you don't have it today? How many games in a row does Marcus Freeman have to lose before, before that starts to be a conversation, before Notre Dame goes to the bullpen? Because lost the ball game, which is okay. It's okay. Lost at Ohio State, which is okay. Yeah. So then, they lost to Marshall. Okay. If they lose to Cal today, Cal is not good. Cal is a bad football team with a bad offense. I mean, it feels like you're probably having a Tommy Rees conversation if this continues. It was, last I saw, it was 10-7 Cal over Notre Dame. But, next week is UNC, North Carolina, who can score, can't play a lick of defense, but they can score. And, I don't know how many, if you're going up against a defense that can't stop anyone, does Notre Dame, score 17? I mean, 20? I mean, how many could they get to 24? Who's to say?
I don't think so.
And then after that, it was, they've got Syracuse, and I mean, they have a couple other teams.
There's a Stanford in there at some point.
Yeah.
There's a Syracuse. I forget what
it was like we were going through the schedule. It was like there's if they don't win this one, it's like 4-8 feels kind of like the ceiling, and it's like, boy, you're not gonna fire a coach in his first year. But I mean, just hypothetically, as a thought exercise, how many games in a row would he have to lose?
Well,
before?
And because we looked at it, and I threw out 5, and we looked at it, and that's not counting last year's, loss in the bowl game. But if they lose this one, 5 is legitimate. And I don't think you can fire him for what they've done so far. If you lose to UNLV, that to me is like, well, you're not qualified. And our players are not qualified. Nobody is qualified, but the head coach has to get the head chopped off. And if you lose to UNLV, like that's plenty. It was a nice thought. Turns out it was completely a panic hire, and now you go find somebody else and promote Tommy Rees, I guess, if you haven't already fired him.
No, that is not the answer. All right, so that's enough Notre Dame talk. Let's talk a little bit about this game. What is a realistic expectation for CJ Stroud tonight? Yeah. I mean, I feel like the conversation around CJ Stroud kind of involves the conversation that we just had about Jackson Smith and Jigba and Julian Fleming. But let's say that those guys are playing, at least, they're out there, and we're not probably, I think we talked about Jackson Smith and Jigba and 5 catches and 80 yards or 5 catches 75 yards, something like that. Maybe he's under that, maybe that's over it. We'll see, but. Not a massive Jackson Smith and Jigba game, but where he's potentially playing and you're just sort of trying to get back on the same track and all that kind of stuff. It feels like sort of the baseline for CJ Stroud right now is like a 70% completion and 280 yards, 300 yards, something like that, and 3-4 touchdowns.
That's average.
That's average, which is, I mean, go back 20 years, and that's like one of the greatest performances in Ohio State history. And this is just like, well, this is what he does, and it's nothing special and whatever. Are you kind of taking the over on the majority of those numbers tonight, or are you thinking that this is maybe going to be a little bit more of a try and run the ball kind of game?
Well, we know Toledo has arguably the best pass defense in the nation, having held Long Island and UMass to, I believe, 58 yards passing a game. So that's no joke, Tom, no matter what you might think. But I agree with what Kevin was saying on Friday, where he thinks it's time to get the passing game going, because you're going to need it. I think what I said earlier, you just got to get things crisp again. And that way that helps the running game, that helps the entire offense. It helps the offensive line. If there just isn't the confusion, the timing, all of that is cleared up, because they can run the ball. We've seen they can run the ball in the first quarter, the fourth quarter, whatever. That seems like it's easier to get going. But I think I'm expecting them to throw the ball. Now, last week they came out and ran the ball in the first quarter and did pretty well. Maybe now it's like, well, let's do the other thing and see how that goes. But the good thing about this offense is they can do either and march the ball down the field and then do the next thing on the next drive. And then now you've just got a defense that can't keep up. And really, that's – I guess you take what the defense gives you, obviously, Tom. But also they're going to want to assert some things. They want to start out fast, but I'm interested to see exactly how they do that. And that's the same for every game. Like, how are they going to start out? And is it going to be 21-0 after 12 minutes of play or something like that, or is it another 7-3 slog because they can't get the ball back, or just Ohio State goes 3 and out, and now Toledo's had 2 possessions, and they've taken up the entire quarter.
Yeah, and part of that is obviously predicated on how quickly the defense gets off the field, and it doesn't feel like this should be a game where they have a ton of trouble getting off the field. We feel like we've said a lot of the stuff last week because you're sort of framing these games, non-power games, in a similar way. If they're giving up a bunch of 12-play drives, that's a little bit of a concern. A big play here or there, that's kind of just part of what a Jim Knowles defense is. Like, they're going to be aggressive, and the players love that. They're going to go after the quarterback. They're going to play zero sometimes, and sometimes when you play zero, you give up a touchdown, and Jim Knowles knows that, and Jim Knowles is fine with that. So you just sort of have to understand that that's potentially one of the things you're looking at. I'm with you on the fact that last week they came in, and Ryan Day talked during the Notre Dame game about, that he probably got away from the run too much and wanted to run the ball more, and that this is an opportunity now for them where they're probably looking at this and going, okay, we have to, last week we wanted to run the ball. This week, assuming these guys are healthy, assuming Jackson Smith-Njigba's good to go, and assuming Julian Fleming's good to go, you're going to want to throw the ball. You're going to want to just start to build that rhythm between C.J. Stroud and those two guys, and C.J. Stroud and Marvin Harrison, and C.J. Stroud and Mecca Ibuka, and all the other guys. It feels like this is probably, the numbers I gave, 70% and 280 yards and 3 touchdowns, whatever. This feels like that's probably an over game to me, where they're going to come out, they're going to want to throw the ball. They'll want to run the ball too, but you're probably going to throw the ball. They will, if they don't hit the magic 226 number tonight that we talked about on the bold prediction show, it's because they're throwing the ball and they're not running it. And, it feels like they can kind of do whatever they want in this game, and they're going to want to throw the ball.
Well, and this feels like one of those 250 yards passing in the first half. Like, we haven't seen one of those yet where they just come out and they're throwing the ball all over the place. But I have a crazy idea. Why not throw it sometimes and run it sometimes, all in the same drive? Why do you need to do one or the other? Tom, I say do both. And then you don't have to catch up in the fourth quarter. Like, we want to be balanced, so let's run the ball. Like, just if you're balanced the entire time. Now, again, the defense is going to dictate on the RPOs what you do. And if you hit a big play, that's going to take a number of plays out of the equation as well. But I don't know that you need to set out and say, all right, we're going to throw the ball in the first drive,
Something else that could really hurt their offensive total yardage numbers, if they were trying to kick off for a touchdown. You, Tony, are pretty optimistic that there's a better than average chance that they will return a kickoff for touchdown.
The average is 0, so yes, there's a better.
Yes, there is a better than average chance that they will in fact return a kickoff for a touchdown tonight. They have not. It has not happened since 2010. Why are you thinking tonight might be that night?
Well, one, Ohio State is due. And they're due way overdue. This is like an elephant pregnancy going on here. But also, talking to Emeka Ibuka, who was the kickoff returner until last week when Chip Trainum took over, he said, hey, Chip might even be better than me. And when he's running, people don't want to tackle him. He's big. He's like 5'10", 5'11", 230 pounds, one of the fastest guys on the team. Does it really well in practice. Now, practice is not the same, obviously, as a game, especially on kickoff returns. But you know what? This is something that we all want to see in terms of just a 230-pound linebacker, former running back. Yes, we get that. But a linebacker returning kicks, that's always fun. I assume we never get to see it. Mm-hmm. But also, Toledo, of their 18 kickoffs, only 5 have been touchbacks. So I think that's the key. There's going to be at least one opportunity. So again, that's a tough call for you to hit on that one. But Toledo scores some points. Maybe there's 3 or 4 opportunities for Chip Trainum. And Tom, I guarantee you, if he gets 5 opportunities, he's taking one to the house. That's a guarantee.
5 opportunities. So are we counting free kicks with safeties in there, or are you asking
any return that he moves forward on? If he gets 5 of those, my stone cold lock guarantee that has absolutely no meaning or bearing on anything is that he will take one to the house.
My stone cold lock guarantee is that we will not, in fact, get 5 returns where he is catching the ball
like
and moving forward.
Chicken.
And moving forward. I just made a stone cold lock guarantee, sir. I can't
possibly be a coward.
anything less cowardly than that. I did want to we get these game notes from the sports information departments, and there's always some good stuff in there. I shared one of the great ones on here. There's just some really good ones on here from Ohio State. Ryan Day's teams, we talked about this, 32-0 when they score 30 or more points, 4-4 when they don't. That was a really good one this week. CJ Stroud has passed for 5,009 yards in his career. If he throws for 388 yards, which is probably not going to happen in this one game, probably not. But if he does, would move past both Justin Fields and Dwayne Haskins into 9th place, which is, for a guy who played 12 games last year, and this is the 3rd game this year, 15 career games, to be already potentially, getting in the neighborhood of top 10, top 9 of the list. That's pretty impressive. And, the sport has changed a little bit. This program has changed a little bit over the years, so that is a little different.
Yeah, the bigger statement to me, not to interrupt you, is Dwayne Haskins being there with just 1 season of starting, Justin Fields being there with 1.5 seasons of starting. And that's the story of Ohio State throwing the ball over the years.
Yeah, that is Ryan Day. Guys with a year and a half in that system under Ryan Day are top 10 in the program history. If you had a 3-year starter, and I don't know when you're going to have a 3-year starter here again, but if you had a 3-year starter, it's like as unbreakable as a record can possibly be. It feels like
that's Archie Griffin's rushing records.
Yeah. Ohio State 49-0-1 since they lost to Oberlin in 1921. That's kind of an interesting one.
Against whom?
Against Oberlin?
In-state opponents, Tom?
In-state opponents, yes. Yes, against in-state opponents, yes. Here in the Toledo notes.
Because it seemed like they had played more than 50 games since the Oberlin game.
Never lost one. True fact. Toledo has played 28 teams ranked in the top 25 all time. 28.
Okay.
How many games have they won against top 25 opponents in 28 tries?
I will say they are 5-23.
Hater.
7.
Hater.
9.
Wow.
That's pretty good. That's
9 times. 9 and 19, 6 and 14 against the Big Ten, 6 and 11 against non-Ohio State Big Ten, which is probably more relevant. One of those wins, of course, against Michigan in 2008. I said to you earlier this week, this is a Tony Pacos game. Tony Pacos, the famous Hungarian hot dog place on the east side of the river in Toledo. And my in-laws called it, my father-in-law always called it Hunky Town. I'm not sure if they're Hunky Town, which is like the Hungarian neighborhood. They have on the wall there a framed picture of a newspaper from when Toledo beat Michigan in 2008. I said to you, this is a Tony Pacos game. All Ohio State has to do is not end up framed on the walls of Tony Pacos.
Yeah, and one of my favorite bits from that season is Tom Amstutz, the Toledo coach, beats Michigan, still gets fired later that year because they were bad. It was a bad Toledo team, and they were still able to beat Michigan in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, I think that game ended up 13-10 or something like that. It was a really bad game. So that's
fun.
I mean, interesting, memorable, but yes, yes, not a great game. So Toledo, I mean, this is a team that it feels like this is going to be a decent MAC team. This is not a terrible team. This is not UConn or UMass or LIU or Colorado State or Hawaii. This is a good MAC team. Maybe not a MAC championship team, but this is a probably 50th to 60th in the nation kind of team. So this is definitely not going to be a 72-0 kind of game. I think, to me, you look at Toledo, and I think you kind of have to start with their quarterback, DeQuan Finn. He's someone who can make some plays with his legs, can make some plays with his arm, can buy some time with his legs to then make plays with his arms. This seems like a game where the opposing quarterback is not going to pick Ohio State apart, but might be the kind of guy who can maybe just be a little bit of a pain in the butt where, it's 3rd and 8 and just you think they've got him, and then they don't have him.
Yeah, and on 3rd downs, the crowd is going crazy. The music is loud. He keeps play alive, picks up a 1st down. Now the crowd has to do it again. They start to get bummed out by that. And that's one of those ways that he can hurt you. Last year as a starter, 18 touchdown passes, 2 interceptions, careful with the ball. Does have 1 interception this year. Is he too conservative? Does he not take chances? Or now as an experienced guy, does he take more chances? And can you play in this game without taking chances? That's another thing where He's going to have to take some chances if he's trying to win. And so it'll be interesting to see how he does. He's not the most accurate guy either, so I think there's going to be some issues there where Ohio State can make some plays on him.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like they're going to be able to maintain drives, 12 play type of drives. But you might hit, you might hit a big play here or there. You might hit an annoying third down here or there that, somewhere in Ohio, someone is going to throw a TV remote into the wall at some point because he has picked up a third down that has annoyed them.
Yes.
You should probably not be that person is my professional life advice to you. Someone who you should be is someone who is very excited about the next segment that we're going to be having, which is our good buddy Alex Gleitman from BuckeyeHuddle.com. He does a weekly segment kind of giving you an update on recruiting and where things stand with the Buckeyes right now with some of their top targets and some of their visitors. So here's Alex's report for today's game.
Thanks, guys. Another exciting Saturday night in Ohio Stadium, another night game, which means another opportunity for Ohio State to host a solid group of recruits who played on Friday night or maybe even earlier in the day on Saturday if they are local. The list isn't as long as it was a couple weeks back for the game against Notre Dame. That was obviously a star-studded list. Tons of 4- and 5-star prospects from across the country came in for the Buckeyes home opener. Just 2 weeks later, it's hard to get that many guys back on campus. Maybe next week for the Wisconsin game, which is another night game. But they have a pretty solid group of somewhat local prospects for the Toledo game this evening. That's spearheaded by 2023 commits Luke Montgomery and Malik Hartford. The two Ohio natives will be in the horseshoe, kind of leading those recruiting efforts and in helping the Ohio State coaches while they're down on the field coaching the game. In the 2024 class, a couple of interesting linebackers. In-state linebacker from the Toledo area, Jason Kelly, as well as Detroit area linebacker Kari Jackson. Both of them have Division I offers. They're 2024 prospects, so they're still being evaluated. Obviously invited to the game tonight, so Jim Knowles has his eye on them, and we'll continue to evaluate them as their seasons go on. A linebacker / safety who does have an offer is Garrett Stover, cousin of Cade Stover. 4-star prospect, has a chance to be, if not the best prospect in Ohio, one of the top 3 prospects in Ohio in the class of 2024. I'm not sure the when, but I feel like the if it is not a factor. I do think he will be a Buckeye commit at some point down the road. He will be back in the horseshoe. He was at the Notre Dame game a couple weeks back. So always exciting to get a big-time target like Garrett Stover in the house. And then another local kid, a defensive back, Cam Frazier in the 2024 class. Definitely an offer candidate. They want to see his junior season. I think they'll probably want to see him in camp in the summer before deciding one way or another. But he was invited to the game, and he will be in Ohio Stadium. He confirmed to me. One 2024 prospect who's coming from outside state borders is Quentin Martin, not too far outside state borders. The Bell Vernon native in the Pittsburgh area will be in Ohio Stadium. He's a kid who was on campus this summer, landed an offer from the Buckeyes, outstanding running back, very good defensive back, being recruited on both sides of the ball by many colleges. I think Ohio State likes him a little bit more as a defensive back prospect. We'll see how his visit goes if he does indeed show up as expected in the horseshoe, but that's definitely a big-time visitor. That's a 5-star type of player. And he's one of the headliners for this weekend. And then, we'll cap things off with 2025 kids. Marquise Davis making his second visit in a row. He was there last week for the Arkansas State game, had a great time. Doesn't have an offer yet, but looking like one of the top overall players in Ohio for 2025. Certainly one of the top running backs along with Bo Jackson, who already does have an offer from Ohio State. Marquise Davis told me that Ohio State was the school he grew up rooting for. So an offer would be a dream come true. And I would think Ohio State is very hard to beat, which is maybe why they're taking a little bit of time and making sure that they have that evaluation right. But the Cleveland Heights star will be in the horseshoe once again, which is always a great time. And then they're also hosting Toledo native Carter Lowe, a big kid, about 6'5", 300 pounds. Someone they'll be watching moving forward. Absolutely Toledo Whitmer product. So, he gets to see his hometown Rockets play the Buckeyes. Toledo's certainly going to be a school that's absolutely on him, but he's obviously hoping that Ohio State is as well. there will sure to be some surprise visitors along the way, as there always is. So we'll keep you posted on all of those, as well as, catch up with these guys after the game to get their reactions and see how their recruitment's going when it comes to Ohio State. Keep it tuned in to BuckeyeHuddle.com.
Hey, I don't know why I didn't auto roll back to the to the camera shot, but here I am. I'm sitting in for Tom Orr, and of course still here with Tony Gerdeman. Tony,
Thank you, Kevin.
I don't want to do the pause. That's not my thing.
No. No, please, nobody do the pause. No. Yeah, good stuff from Alex. It's always interesting to see who comes into these lesser games and guys that can't necessarily make it to the bigger games, or those guys actually get a little extra attention. So I think that's good. But I guess now we can talk about the availability report or the unavailability report, depending on your perception there. So the game time decisions for this week, again, Jackson Smith-Njigba and Julian Fleming. The guys who are out: freshman defensive end Omari Abor, receiver Cameron Babb, safety Jansen Dunn, cornerback Jordan Hancock, safety Jalen Johnson, linebacker defensive end Mitchell Melton, linebacker Taraja Mitchell, defensive lineman Zach Prater, running back Evan Pryor, and tight end Joe Royer. Kevin, that's a lot of names, but the two at the top, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Julian Fleming, hoping to get them back. A little discouraging to still see them on this list, even though we kind of expected it.
Well, then that's the thing. And we heard, I saw a tweet from ESPN's Pete Thamel that, that they're going to determine in pregame whether or not they're going to be able to go. There's a lot of speculation that they will go, or at least that Jackson could go, or maybe that Julian could go. So, we'll know, unfortunately, right around the time that we're getting off of the pregame show, we'll probably start to be able to get some ideas, but that's part of the reason why we'll have to jump off the show so we can sit there with binoculars and kind of keep an eye and see who's in full uniform, who's going through drills, who, how they're reacting to things like that. So we'll have a better idea at that point.
Yeah, the Taraja Mitchell not being there is interesting to me. Jordan Hancock didn't play last week. Omari Abor played a little bit last week, but I think with everybody wanting to see Jackson Smith-Njigba out there, wanting to see Julian Fleming out there. Fleming hasn't played since the Rose Bowl, just to get that passing game going. That's what we've been talking about so much. So I don't, I've shared my thoughts. If you want to go ahead and, expound further on the importance of getting those two back into the passing game.
Absolutely, because it's just not a case of dropping them back in and saying everything's hunky-dory and we're good to go. I mean, you have to work on timing and things, and I know you have the off season to work on that. I mean, obviously JSN was healthy to start the season. It was when he was hit by Brandon Joseph of Notre Dame that everything kind of went awry for him. So, the chemistry is there, but you still have to kind of find your way back to it. And you're going against a very difficult defense with Jim Leonard's defense for Wisconsin. A defense where I think that you have to be able to have the passing game. You have to throw to be able to run against Wisconsin. They just do such a good job of clogging things up. Probably not one of the better Wisconsin teams in recent years, but that defense, it's just plug and play. You just take one guy out and you put another guy in, and it's just kind of the same thing, same as it ever was.
Yeah.
So to quote the great David Byrne,
always going back to the new wave, Kevin.
I live in the 80s. I live in the 80s.
But looking at some of these other names, and Joe Royer, he's the fourth tight end, so he's not really been playing much anyway. G. Scott has kind of assumed that role as the third tight end, that second tight end, actually, when you consider Mitch Rossi being the fullback, and he's a different type of guy. So him not being out there, I don't know that it changes things too much, although this is a game where he could have played, I'm guessing.
Does it give somebody like Sam Hunt an opportunity as a true freshman to maybe, at least dip his toe in the water?
Right, and that's something they need. Get Sam Hart out there, get Bennett Christian out there. Maybe we'll see. Jordan Hancock not being out there, and that leaves more for J.K. Johnson. We saw Jair Brown, the freshman, out there last week. Those two guys, I think, are your 3 and 4 right now, and I know they want to get Jordan Hancock back out there. And Tom and I talked about this during the week, where Ryan Day seemed hopeful that Hancock would play, and then Knowles is like, well, yeah, we'd like to get him back, without like any sense of hope that it was going to be this week. And clearly it's not. But
Jim hasn't gotten the memo yet that we no sell injuries around here.
that's true. Exactly. Yeah. I don't know what a hamstring is, possibly, but he's fine. But Ryan Day also hoping to get Cameron Babb this week. That back this week. That's not going to happen. And, it's just 3 games now, hasn't played in over a year. And I think they're going to be obviously very, very careful with him, because when he does finally start to play, you don't want to lose him again. So they're going to take him however slowly they need to do it, just so that he's available and can play.
Right, and that's the thing. Everybody wants to get guys out there immediately and see the depth and see all these players that they're really excited about. But if you make a move too quick and they're not fully back, you put them in a bad situation, and then it becomes a season-long injury, and you've gained nothing and lost everything at that point. So there needs to be a measure of patience, especially in these games that we believe that there's not a huge sense of urgency to be able to get some of these guys out there.
Yeah, looking at the rest of the list, really, Taraji Mitchell has been on special teams, hasn't really been doing much defensively, so they'll have to figure that part out in terms of who takes that role of not jumping over the blockers on the punt return.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe he was injured from up downs.
That's true. Core muscle injury type of thing, just the getting up and down. Yeah, that's very possible. Omari Abor not being out there, this might have been a game where we could have seen him, but I think, Kevin, there's going to be a different freshman defensive end that we might be seeing quite a bit of instead.
I think his name is Caden Curry.
Yes.
And, the hope is that maybe we see him in some earlier action. Maybe we see him in some first half action. He's not somebody that you're saying that needs to get out there and get 18, 20 snaps in the first half, but let him get out there and run. Let him run in the Rushman package. Let him go out there early in the game when it may still be somewhat contested, more so than late in the fourth quarter when everybody's just trying to play out the string. And I think it would be a good test to see what you have in Caden Curry. Is this something moving forward that you're going to be able to do more? Because it's going to be a lot easier in this type of situation than against, say, Wisconsin.
Yeah, we keep talking about Wisconsin as this big test coming up, and it is compared to what we've seen so far. But yeah, I would like to see Caden Curry out there in the first quarter, second quarter. That way it's not just, well, he's good in a blowout. He did something against Arkansas State in a blowout. See what he can do out here against Toledo. And then you can be like, yeah, well, it's just Toledo. It's like, that's fine, but it's in the first quarter. It's in the second quarter. Where's everybody else making plays? Where are the other defensive ends making plays?
Everybody's saying, well, it's just Toledo. Well, it's just UConn for that team up north and everything there, and anointing J.J. McCarthy. I mean, I saw him tied for like 5th best Heisman odds or something at this point. I mean, it was 30-1. I was like, it was just Hawaii, folks. I understand they don't play anybody this year, but still.
But that September Heisman, that's legit. That's not something to fool with. That's something
that's hat science.
No, come on, don't make fun of hat science. I know in the chat here, there's a lot of talk about Urban.
Yes.
And Nebraska. I'll give you my thoughts, and then I'll let you talk about this. I don't think he wants to come back to college football because it's not the same college football that he left. It's changed greatly. However, the one place where it may be the most similar to what it once was is Nebraska, because I don't know how much NIL goes on there. I don't know how much that really plays into it. You're not necessarily recruiting guys that are all focused on the NIL. Now, they're going to be somewhat focused on that, but it is still maybe more collegiate than other big-time programs, if you want to call Nebraska a big-time program. But I also go back to, like, Urban Meyer's biggest point of advice to all of his assistant coaches: go where you can recruit. And I don't even know if Urban Meyer can recruit in Nebraska anymore. Like, maybe he could have in 2012. I don't know that he can now.
Well, and that's the thing. And to start with NIL, I mean, you don't think that Runza doesn't have a huge slush fund for NIL? Mutual of Omaha. I mean, they used to schedule. They had like that, whatever, the nature show on NBC at nights, or maybe that was on syndication. I don't know. I was a little kid, but
Wild Kingdom.
Something like that. So I mean, there's got to be some NIL dollars there. As Ferris said in the comments, Urban likes money. Urban's got a lot of money, and if you're somebody who is looking to rehabilitate your coaching career, your reputation, your legacy, and everybody's going to remember your half a year stint in the NFL for saying, come here, dip blank, I can kick whoever, I'm the head coach. A pretty good paraphrase there. You best find a situation to where you can win. So if he could take all of the facilities and all of that and pick it up out of the state of Nebraska and move it into Texas, California, Florida, hell, Ohio, and be able to have some kids to recruit, but there are only going to be 3 or 4 kids there a year that are going to be on the upper end of the 3-star range. And you still have to compete with Iowa for a lot of those kids.
And if you're competing with Iowa for kids, then you're going to have an Iowa type program. And look what Iowa is right now with a coach who's been there forever. The difficulty in recruiting the Midwest is something that I think we're seeing that with the Big Ten West right now. They should be spending more money. They should be utilizing all of the money that they're making. But I don't know how that makes you a recruiting power. But Oklahoma does okay. And it's not like Oklahoma is some hotbed of anything.
But they recruit Texas.
Well, that's the thing.
That's a thing.
And with Oklahoma leaving for the SEC, well, they'll still have a Texas footprint because of Texas A&M or whatever. It's like they're other programs can go into Texas. Nebraska used to do it for a while, and then what? Because they left the Big 12, suddenly Texas players didn't want to go there anymore. I don't understand that. Like I don't understand why leaving a conference makes you no longer in that footprint.
Well, it used to be a thing with television. It used to be a case of where we had mirrored national games, split national games. This is on ABC. This is on ESPN2. I mean, how often do people now talk about what's the name of the pay-per-view package that ESPN had? ESPN Game Pass or
something like
that.
I got it a couple of years.
I got it for several years because I was living in Texas and then I was living in Tennessee, and that's the way that I had to see it. So it was a lot more difficult for your family and your friends to be able to see you play. But now every game is a national game, and if you go to a program that isn't playing those, you're on ESPN Plus or some sort of thing along those lines. If you're not playing a game, if you are Nebraska and you don't play any games in the state of Texas, I guess that's the belief. Okay, well, nobody's going to get to go and see you play live. But let's also remember from Beaumont to like El Paso or Amarillo is almost 1,000 miles. So it's not like well, I'm just going to hop on I-35 and go, down the street to go see you play.
I mean, I remember back in the day, people saying, well, when Michigan would recruit Toledo like better than Ohio State, people would say, well, Toledo's closer to Michigan than it is Ohio. It's like Toledo is in Ohio. But I mean, and that's just, that's no comparison to the Texas thing where it's like, just because you're in the borders, like you're somehow tied to this program, because it can be, if you put Texas in the middle of the country, you're spanning 6-8 states basically in terms of the footprint there. And so I think if you just recruit the area, then you can create something out of it. Ohio State can recruit in Florida. Why? There's no connection to Florida other than we're Ohio State and we're going to recruit here. Like they've just decided to do that. Kind of doing it in California and Washington and Pocatello, Idaho. It's like we're just going to go where the players are, and then we're going to keep working it.
So having a winning product is a big difference there, though. When you're going to go there and you've got success, and something that I think was part of Urban's genius, and this isn't something that refers to Tommy Togiai in Idaho, but Ohio State always seemed to load up in areas where the local power was down. He went into Texas when Texas and Texas A&M were a little bit in the tank. Yeah. He was able to go into the DMV area, mostly into Maryland when Maryland was in the tank. He was able to find a lot of that. And then once you get those connections, once you have, recruiting is a relationship business. And once you have those relationships, it doesn't matter if the hometown school is hot at that point. You can go in and recruit. I mean, you're not going to win all of them, certainly, but that's not how recruiting works. I mean, unless you're just locking down your state. I mean, Ohio State is in such a good position in the state of Ohio. Yes, they're going to still be that handful of kids that I'm just not like Eric All. I mean, not that Ohio State really recruited Eric All, but Eric All never liked Ohio State. He told us that during Big Ten media days. Ohio State probably was never going to have a chance at him, or going back in history like a Mario Manningham or somebody like that.
Charles Woodson, who always, the story goes, like when John Cooper showed up for his recruiting visit, he was wearing a Michigan shirt or a Michigan coat, Charles Woodson was. But the I you have to. It's hard. It's a chicken egg type thing. You've got to win before you can recruit, but you've got to recruit before you can win. And maybe with Urban, maybe he can recruit the transfer portal, and that's where you get the players. Like that's something that would intrigue him. Losing players, whatever, he will run players off. Like that's he comes from the SEC and he demands a lot. And so if you're only getting guys for a year, you can't really get tired of them. And so maybe the transfer portal,
and they don't get tired of you.
That's the bigger thing, I think, too.
And that's maybe what Nebraska has to look at. I mean, let's look at the resurgence of Michigan State. Mel Tucker's done a lot of that, going through the portal, getting Kenneth Walker the third, and now with who he has there with the Wisconsin former Jalen Berger, and then the other running back that they got too. I mean, he's been trying to have to do a mixture of recruiting the high school players, but getting it through the portal. And Nebraska seriously needs some portal infusion, and because it hasn't, the ones they've gotten haven't worked. I mean, they even were able to go and get somebody from Ohio State out of the portal, and we haven't seen him play yet.
No, and that was a big one. A lot of big headlines when Tyreek Johnson went as landing. Nebraska lands former 5-star corner, and it's like, well, he never played at Ohio State, so don't expect him to play much at Nebraska. But it would be interesting to see how Urban would do with the transfer portal, and I wonder how many players would leave immediately upon his arrival, or does he still have this aura in college football? Because remember when he came to Ohio State, like he kept all of the commitments, like only lost Kyle Kalis maybe, and he had already decommitted to with Luke Fickell, I think, at the time, but like he honored all of those commitments. And the one thing that he has always said is, when you take over a job, don't refer to the players that are still there as the coach's players. Like these are not Luke's players; these are now your players. Don't refer them to as the former staff's players. If you take over that team and the players are there, those are your players, and you have to treat them as such.
And then he was able to get guys like Noah Spence and Adolphus Washington.
Tommy Shutt.
Yes. And as Media Shed just said here, he was the flip master. I mean, he did a great job with all of that. So, and
for a while, like whenever he would lose a commitment, he would replace them with somebody better or somebody more highly ranked.
Right.
But anything we got?
No, I was going to say, why don't we check out Tom's piece from he likes doing his behind the scenes pieces, and this time it's, as it says here in the notes, it's the South Stand. So we'll kind of see what he has there, and we'll check back in with you after this quick segment.
This week's episode of Behind the Scenes at Ohio Stadium is going to take you into a little room underneath South Stands that most people probably don't realize is here. So right now we are in the southwest tunnel. This is the one the visiting team comes down. And we're going to go right under South Stands there. Those bleachers you see there, that's the bottom of South Stands. The band sits there kind of on the other side. But here's where we're going. We're going into this little room underneath South Stands. It is not super big. It is not super fancy. But there is a lot of stuff that goes on down here during a typical Ohio State game. So on the right here, you've got a bunch of stuff. Those are T-shirt guns that they have. Little mini T-shirt cannons or hot dog cannons. They'll shoot stuff into the stands with those. Those are big inflatable things that they have people run out in and do like a contest between, during a commercial break. Lots of flags. This is where the cheerleaders keep a lot of their stuff when they're not using it during games. There are the big flags over there that the cheerleaders will run out with at the start of the game when the team runs out. There's the instant replay system. They keep all that stuff down here. There's just a little bit of everything down here. It's like a little bit of a mini storage shed underneath here. There's this is also where the photographers work during the course of the game. There's a little room for Brutus. He has his own little room there. But then this is what they call the photo bunker underneath South Stands. And it is extremely fancy. It is plain wooden tables, plain wooden benches, and folding chairs. This is where all the photographers will run down here between quarters, at halftime, end of the game, and there'll be computers set up on all these different stations. They're all blocked out with gaffer's tape so that everyone just keeps their one spot. And you'll have photographers sitting in all these different spots and getting their photos onto the computer, editing them, and then sending them off to whoever is their website, their newspaper, whoever it is that they're sending their photos to. Now, this is also, you see those golf carts there? Those carts are some of the ones that will come zipping through here before the game, at halftime, and at the end of the game. And what those are, a couple of them there are the ones that guys, if they're injured, will be on. But there are also carts that will come down here during halftime, after the game, before the game, and will bring the assistant coaches from Ohio State across the field, because the Ohio State locker room is up that tunnel. So you got to go all the way up that tunnel, come all the way down here, across the photo bunker, all the way up the other tunnel behind you, and then out around the stadium, about halfway around the stadium, and that's where the elevator to the press box is. So the coaches who are up on the box, so guys like Jim Knowles, Kevin Wilson, Corey Dennis, those guys are all going to be on that golf cart, riding a golf cart kind of like this one that's coming down here. They'll come zipping through here. I'm going to show you a video of that happening last week, just so you can sort of see it comes zipping right through here, right through this tunnel, and there's a lot of... as soon as it's going to be coming, there's a lot of yelling, cart, get out of the way, everybody out of the way. Cart will zip through here, back up around that other tunnel, up to the press box. So that's where the coaches are staying during the first half, and they'll come back down, come to the locker room at halftime, and then go back all the way up there to be up there for the second half. A couple other interesting things here. There are extra goal posts. Like I said, this is kind of like a little bit of just a storage area. They store a hose there, goalposts, all sorts of stuff down here. Leaf blowers that they'll use to blow out the stands, blow the trash out of the stands. Just kind of a little bit of everything down here. But this is the photo bunker, the little secret room underneath South Stands. Thought you guys might enjoy that. This is where I spend a good amount of time on a game day. And pop right out here. There's the tunnel that the Buckeyes will run out of at the start of the game. So hope you guys enjoyed that, and we'll be back with another one of these next week.
Well, there you go. So thank you, Tom, for your behind-the-scenes look around South Stands and the photo bunker. You know, it's something that if you don't get to walk here, you don't know that it's. I mean, and people are like, photo bunker. What are you talking about? Well, that's it. I mean,
yeah, no, it's interesting that you see the stands, and it's like you don't think about what's underneath it. And it turns out there's a bunch of photographers down there.
Yes, shocking. But I wanted to take a chance to sit there and remind everybody about the website, the great website, Buckeye Huddle. Get all the best in team and recruiting coverage. Michigan Monday. You can see all of Tony's great stories, all of Tom's great stories, all of my marginal stories. Great recruiting coverage from Mark and Alex, X's and O's from Ross and Devin and Justin, all of that at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Look at the scroll at the bottom. Give us a look. Check us out right now. So we'll go on from there. I'm just checking a note that we're getting as Tom is looking for where to set up his next shot. But let's bring us back on camera, and there we are. Tony is reading his notes right there.
Right now, Tom is trying to be live somewhere, and of course, the Wi-Fi in amidst the crowd is not working. That he can and check in with us on location. Where in the world is Tom Orr today? And the cell signals.
Well, it doesn't matter because there's no Wi-Fi in here either right now. So for those of you who are seeing a little bit of buffering, I apologize. If we get to a point of where it hiccups again, I will switch over to my hotspot. We will run off of my hotspot for the post-game show for all of the equipment, for all the parts that we're going to be shooting here from Ohio Stadium. But speaking of the post-game show, don't miss out on that either. I do not have a teaser board for that one right now, but you'll get immediate reaction from the game from Mark Givler and Devin Radcliffe. You will get the Ryan Day interview, hopefully CJ Stroud and other player interviews. And then, of course, you'll get a full dose of Tom and Tony with all of their post-game observations and so on. And then I may even chime in a little bit as well.
No, you're going to have to. We can only do so much of this by ourselves. You're going to have to do something today, Kevin.
I'll set up the camera and hit go or whatever. And, it'll be a late night. And, we're playing 3 of the first 4 at night. I'm getting some nice late drives through Columbus.
Yeah. Is there actually a go button on a camera? Isn't it like just to record or like?
It doesn't say go on it.
Well, then why do you say go? It's like it's not very professional. Anyway,
Well, neither am I.
I just said you're not very professional. Anyway,
Oh, okay.
Any great topics in there?
Let me see what we have here. Bold prediction from Tony. Obviously, Tony Gerdeman's burner account. Bold prediction for the game today. Tony wins bold prediction show by 2 or more predictions, and I'm holding this one until Tom was out running around, so he couldn't cry about it.
Well, here's one of you want to know why I lose every week. Here's one of Tom's bold predictions, and I just didn't have the energy to fight. He said Ohio State will not give up a rushing touchdown today. Is that bold to you?
No, because Toledo lost a 1,400-yard rusher last year, is running back by committee, and honestly, DeQuan Finn is probably their best runner right now. So I don't think that's all that bold.
Yeah, and they've done it in half of their games this year. They've not allowed a rushing touchdown against just last week. They did, and it's exhausting and it's tiring, and I just did not have the energy. It's been a long week for me, so he got that one in, and if he wins 1-0, everybody now knows why. But I do feel pretty good. I've got some very bold predictions, which means they are not likely to hit. But that's how it goes.
Well, then, and I'll jump here to another one from Brian DeGroff saying, once OSU gets their 220-ish, y'all need to find a new bold prediction.
I agree. I definitely agree. Yes, that's true. So once that does hit, it has to be 226 this week, or it doesn't count.
Like on the nose?
No. Over 226. Because
okay.
we both wanted to take 220, so then we have to, name that tune it up to the number where nobody else wants it. And so I got it at 226, and we'll see how it goes. It's time for Ohio State to rush for like 250 yards in a game, but we'll see if they actually do it.
Well, and I think the thing is that if you sit there and you start to take the top off the defense and you force the safeties to stay back, and then you open up some things. But once again, is it a run to pass or pass to run type of situation? I think that Ohio State's going to have a lot of success on offense, but when we went through our score predictions, I refused to pick a cover because Ohio State has not covered in some time now.
Well, that's true. Yeah. When was the last time they covered? It would have been November, I guess.
I was going to say Michigan State.
Michigan State, yeah. I did pick them to cover, surprisingly to myself. I just feel like the offense is going to be there this week. I do think for that 226 yards, they might need like a 70-yarder just because all of the big plays last week were essentially in the passing game, save for like the one Travion Henderson run. So I think you need a couple of those big plays in the running game just because they don't have that many plays. They don't snap the ball all that much because of the big plays and the big chunks of yards. They're more likely to have like 65 plays than 75 plays. It makes life difficult for a guy like me.
Well, that's just it's sometimes hard for people to accept awesomeness. I mean, you might not know about it, but I know about it. There have been I'm going through a lot of the comments. We're still a lot of people talking about Nebraska, people talking about Northwestern, Purdue's situation, Purdue, and probably just got another 15-yard penalty against it right now.
Can I say something about Northwestern? Because I have been a Pat Fitzgerald critic for years now, and people are the Pat Fitzgerald apologists. He's winning there at Northwestern, and it's tough to do. Is he winning? I mean, he has won. Is he winning now? Like, how many years do you allow this to happen? And they're different. They need to have their older players step up and then carry them for a season or two. Yeah, against Southern Illinois, do you need that?
Well, this is supposed to be the year because they've had success in even years. In 20 and 18, they've gone to the Big Ten championship game to be Ohio State's opponent and ultimately lose to Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. So, according to theory, all right, 21, very bad. 22 was supposed to be a good year. It hasn't been that good. They have Evan Hull, who's a tremendous player. I mean, they've got, an NFL-ready left tackle. And then what do they have at that point? They don't really have a lot between that. But, again, who is going to go in there? Randy Walker's only walking through that door every so often. Pat Fitzgerald, I think, fits that mold.
Yeah, he does.
But then again, you sit there and you look at some of the coaches with Randy Walker, with Gary Barnett. I mean, they did have, they had a run of coaches for being a program that up until the time they built that lakefront facility really did not give a rat's ass about athletics.
And I'm not saying he should be fired or anything like that. I'm just saying stop calling him one of the top coaches in the country. He's a comfortable guy. He's a lifer. He doesn't have to do anything else other than coach Northwestern. And if he wins 8 games in a terrible Big Ten West every 3 years or every 2 years, that keeps people happy. He doesn't prove anything. Like anybody in that division can win that division, which tells you how terrible that division is. And also you saw how terrible the division is this week.
Troy V asking, why is this a 7 p.m. game? And short of me just giving you the cookie cutter answer of because TV said so. Because TV said so. I mean, it's kind of what it comes down to. It's on Big Fox, which the big difference there is it's your Fox affiliate where you watch The Simpsons, where you watch MasterChef, where you watch the X-Files. I don't know. I mean, as opposed to FS1, or we don't even have the regional sport nets anymore. Those are, Valley Sports. But, somebody decided that Ohio State is a good draw, even against a team that maybe doesn't move the needle nationally. This is the first national telecast for Toledo, or so Kyle Rowland told me on Behind Enemy Lines. So it's. I would have preferred it to be a little earlier in the day, but it'll be a good scene here at Ohio Stadium under the lights. If you're local, you still probably have a chance to pick up a ticket and head on over.
Yeah, I would suggest that, and I assume the closer it gets to kickoff, the cheaper those tickets outside of the stadium are going to be. I still don't understand how to transfer tickets now. It's beyond me at this point because I've never tried it.
It's been a while since I've had a ticket to a game, and I'm not sure. Yakov saying this should have been a noon game on FS1 in his opinion. I think that there are people that would agree with that.
It is hard for the coaches to not be happy with a 7 p.m. Fox national kickoff. Like that's going to put you in front of a lot of people. It's good for recruiting. It's good for everything. It's maybe not the best viewing experience, but Fox has a doubleheader tonight too. So that's
they have a quadruple header. Was what they're really calling it, because I mean they had what was their early game? It was the Oklahoma Nebraska.
Yeah.
And then they went to did they have the Oregon game or I don't know. But then they have the Ohio State game is the third game, and then they have a game after that, which means when you put things in 3.5 hour windows, everything's late, and then you have to figure out where FS2 is because they're going to have to farm it out to somewhere.
I do think this is a preview for what is to come, like next year, where you have they're going to have some double headers in the Big Ten on Fox with the expansion. When you've got USC and UCLA that you can turn to have some of those road night games. So I think this is a nice little dry run for something that will eventually be pretty cool. Not to say it's not cool now.
Right. So see that Tom is setting up a shot down in the stadium, but no action there yet. But we will get to see the team arrival at the stadium, so stay tuned for that. I don't necessarily. What is it? It's 5:02. What time does the team come through? Do we have time to squeeze in my story?
That might run it right to it. So
we'll take a shot at this. I didn't know that I was going to be on set at this point, so disregard me saying thanks, guys. There, but give you a little bit of a history lesson of Ohio State versus in-state teams here on the pregame show. Give me 1 second to find it, and here we go.
Thanks, guys. We're here back at my home office for now as we talk a little bit of history when it comes to Ohio State against teams from within the state of Ohio. Obviously, Toledo is part of the state of Ohio. Almost was not the case if the Toledo War would have gone differently, but they are. So I'm looking here at history, and it has not been since 1897 that Ohio State has lost to a major college in terms of the state of Ohio, and that's Cincinnati. They're 15-2 against the Bearcats with losses in 1896 and 1897. They're 8-1 against Akron, which was known as Bucktail College, with a loss in 1894. Bowling Green, they're 5-0. Kent State, they're 3-0. Miami of Ohio, they're 6-0. Ohio U, they're 6-0. And Toledo, they're 3-0, and hoping to make that 4-0 later today. So the last loss in state would be to Cincinnati, 1897. What was America like in 1987? Well, Grover Cleveland was your president to start the year, but we would see William McKinley, fine Ohioan, sworn into office in March. Also in 1897, the first Boston Marathon was run. Amelia Earhart was born in 1897. $100 in 1897 would be worth, in today's dollars, $3,568.33 as of Friday. And Henry Ford built his first car just a year earlier in 1896. Well, not the car as you know it. It was the quadricycle. And braver man than me to be able to ride around in that. It got me to looking at some of these other teams that Ohio State would play. Because let's remember, back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, college football wasn't what it is today. You certainly weren't hopping on a plane or your quadricycle to go to, far off distant places to go play. So you were playing a lot of local teams and clubs. And, you certainly have on the list, Ohio State's 3-0 against Heidelberg, 1-0 against Mount Union, 7-0 against Muskingum, 1-0 against Wilmington. Then we start to get into some other things that just really we don't know what. I don't know what they are. 17th Regiment 1-0, Camp Sherman 1-0, the Dayton YMCA 1-0. But then we do find some losses that happen in here. They're 26-2-1 against Ohio Wesleyan, 14-1-2 against Denison, 13-2-3 against Otterbein, 12-3-0 against Wittenberg, 6-2 against Marietta, 17-6-0 against Kenyon, 5-2-1 against Ohio Medical, 4-2-2 against Worcester, 13-10-3 against Oberlin. So now we're starting to get into a situation of where they're almost underwater. They were 11-10-2 against Case Institute of Technology. More on them here in a second. And the only team that is above 500 against Ohio State historically, Western Reserve, 5-6-1. Those games took place between 1891 and 1934. Case Tech would end up merging with Western Reserve to become Case Western Reserve. So then when you really merge all that together, it becomes 16-16-3, as I do a little quick math there. But, a very different day and age back then. College football, not nearly the business that it is today. None of that type of situation going on. But, Ohio State, just for major colleges today, very well, doing very well against Ohio teams. As I said, their only loss against anybody in the MAC was Bucktail College in 1894, a couple of losses to Cincinnati in 1896 and 1897. And since then, it's been pretty much smooth sailing, even with some close games, including a 27-22 win over Toledo in 2011, the year that we remember as being the transitional year from the Jim Tressel era to the Urban Meyer era. I don't like putting all that on the feet of Luke Fickell, as it was kind of a stacked deck against him in a large part because he was without several of his star players, and he was going forward with a staff that wasn't necessarily his. So, take that as you will. But we will find out if Ohio State can be 4-0 against Toledo and continue its in-state dominance here in just a couple short hours. But until then, back to you guys.
Yes, back to you guys. Tony. I just need to have like colds in and outs on there and not do that anymore. If we're going to be sending Tom off for bad behavior.
Well, that might be the last time we send Tom. But thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kevins. Great to hear from you both.
Doctor.
So we are waiting for the team to arrive. That should be happening any minute now. And when that does, we'll throw it down to Tom. Surprise, that's where he is. We could just break down the fourth wall. We tried to get you to Skull Session, but the Wi-Fi, the cell signal just not happening. So we tried, but that's what we do here. We try. Sometimes we fail, but then we make up for it by showing the team coming in whenever they happen to be here. And like I said, maybe a couple of minutes. We got that package done, perfect timing, and now we will wait. And while we're waiting, Kevin,
I wanted to kind of talk about our Mark Gibbler was in South Florida over the weekend for some big games. He got to see Ohio State target Damon Wilson down there on Thursday, but then he was at the Shamadan Madonna American Heritage game. He got to see commits like Brandon Ennis and Mark Fletcher. He got to see targets like JoJo Trader and Jeremiah Smith. Shamadan Madonna ended up winning the game. It was a thrilling game, lots of highlights. We have, I think, like 8 minutes of highlights. I'm expecting interviews with all of the key players. I mean, it's being one guy down there, though. I mean, sometimes it can be a real mess at having to cover games with just one target to talk to. But nobody does it like our Mark Gibler in terms of covering these types of events. So we will have plenty of content about that coming up here on Buckeye Huddle in the coming days. But it certainly was something that warranted being talked about a little bit.
Yeah, and I watched some of that it was streaming on YouTube, so I was watching that. And J.J. Smith with basically the game clinching 87-yard catch and run for the touchdown for Shamadan, where he catches a slant. One guy's trying to tackle him, another guy hits him, and he just bounces off of him and just streaks to the end zone. 2024 number one wide receiver, rumored to be committing to the Buckeyes eventually at some point.
Well, and there was a point several months ago that he was looking for the edit. And, those who follow recruiting know when you're looking for the edit, you're about ready. And he did end up coming out and saying, yeah, I was about ready to pull the trigger, but people close to me said, hey, why rush? Slow down a little bit. But no reason to believe that Ohio State has lost its position at the top of his list. And I would say a really good shot on Jeremiah Smith. And then with JoJo Trader, his teammate, I think that's somebody else that Ohio State could land. Maybe not as clear cut of a decision, but if you sat there and said, make a decision right now, who do you think he commits to? It would be Ohio State.
Is he listed as a corner, an athlete, a receiver?
I think he's listed as an athlete at this point. And I had the chance when he was here with South Florida Express to talk to him and some of his teammates. And I was kind of being like, so receiver, athlete, he's humble about it. It's like, I just want to get out there and contribute to my team, so on and so forth.
Like Ted Ginn, so you're saying he's the next Ted Ginn?
Well, there you go.
Well, that's.
I mean, JoJo's position is wide receiver, but he's still listed in a lot of databases as an athlete, though. So take it for what it's worth.
Yeah, and Brandon Ennis had some really nice plays. Fumbled, and on the last drive, essentially one of the last drives for American Heritage, and Madonna recovered it, and that kind of cost them their drive to tie it. But Mark Fletcher is a tough dude to bring down. He's a big back, and some really interesting talent in that game from both sides.
And one other player from American Heritage to talk about, Damon Fagan. He's committed to NC State at this point, but Ohio State could circle back and take a look. Fagan was very interested in Ohio State, but you never know how it goes at that point. Brian Hartline and Perry Eliano, I believe, were both at the game.
Yeah.
That's that private jet sweet life that you get to do that. You're down there on a Friday and you're back here preparing for a game on a Saturday. Just part of the grind that these coaches put in.
Yeah, Mark tweeted that out, and so I retweeted it, and somebody else responds like, they've got a game tomorrow. What are they doing at a high school game? And I just responded, the hay's in the barn. Every Friday they post on social media, work week is done. And it's like everything, all the preparation is done. Now all you have to do is just wake up and go play the game. But if you've got some time, how long do you think it takes them from the time they leave their house or leave this building to go to the airport and how long does it take them to get from where they leave to when they're at the game? Like, is it 2.5 hours? What's the turnaround time on that?
We should be getting our shot from Tom down on the field here shortly. I'm keeping an eye on it, so I'll just punch that up as soon as the shot comes up. At this point, it's still the ramp, so we're just keeping an eye on it at this point. But yeah, I mean, just a tremendous game. We see games often where there's 3 or 4 kids to keep an eye on, but this one just was so deep. And then there also was a young guy too. I think his name's Malachi Tony, who probably should be picking up an Ohio State offer pretty quick as well. I think he's just a freshman, and he, very dynamic.
Yeah. It's just every year it's somebody new that comes through both of those schools. And the Buckeyes have had players from American Heritage before. I assume they've had some from Chaminade, right? I can't think of any off the top
No,
of
they
my
have,
head.
because that's where they got two from Kenyatta Jackson and my shot just kind of got a little crummy there. I'm afraid to make the switch over to my Wi-Fi at this point. We're gonna roll with it here. Yes, thanks, Devin, with a nice side by side. We got all sorts of tools here on our streaming platform. Unfortunately, the one tool that we don't have is stable Wi-Fi.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about Tom downstairs.
Well, he's a tool too, but don't tell him I said that. I'm scared of him.
So yeah, they are. It looks like it's got some social media action going there, and
All right. Let's try that again. Whoops. Let's try that again. We will drop the shot so Tom can get back to his next spot. But we're sitting here. It's about 5:18. Let's jump back into the availability report for all of you that have gotten into the show a little bit late.
Yeah, for those who are just joining us, may not have heard, game time decisions today for Julian Fleming and Jackson Smith and Jigba. We'll see if they're out there warming up here in the next hour or so. The unavailable players are freshman defensive end Amari Abor, receiver Cameron Babb, safety Jansen Dunn, cornerback Jordan Hancock, safety Jalen Johnson, linebacker defensive end Mitchell Melton, linebacker Taraja Mitchell, walk-on defensive lineman Zach Prater, running back Evan Pryor, and tight end Joe Royer. And that's the list. And we've talked earlier in the show about the importance of getting Jackson Smith and Jigba and Julian Fleming back so that you can get this passing game going, Kevin, because until this passing game is where it was last year, the offense isn't going to be where it needs to be this year.
Right. And so far, the defense has given up a grand total of 22 points between 2 games. They're probably not going to be able to keep that going throughout against some opponents.
Ooh.
11 a game?
Hater. Game, you're crazy.
I think that they're going to
4
make
field goals a game. That's 12. That's more than 11.
We're switching to my hotspot. Hopefully, it doesn't drop the shot. That we are having bad Wi-Fi, so we're now on my hotspot.
Well, we probably
as the show is coming to an end, but
great job there, Kevin.
I know. But the point being that you need to get the offense going. We all said, if the offense is 80% of what it was last year and the defense can be 25% better, well, we've seen a defense that's certainly more than 25% better. The offense, 45 points against Arkansas State, probably not the number people thought they were going to hit, but still, I mean, it's a work in progress. They're getting there. I think you can see that C.J. Stroud is getting more locked in with guys like Emeka Ibuka, with guys like Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, being able to involve guys like Xavier Johnson, if you can get Jaden Ballard involved, but obviously getting JSN and getting Julian Fleming into the mix would go a long way as well.
Just wonder what a defense is going to do with Emeka and Marvin Harrison once Jackson Smith and Jigba comes back. And how much do those two free him up? And is it just the same as last year with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, where it's just, what do you do? Like, pick your poison. There's still going to be 2 other guys that are running free, and that's what makes this offense so difficult to defend, is just the sheer talent everywhere. And then you can roll guys in more than they did last year, so guys are fresher.
Well, and when you do that too, maybe you get out of as much 12 and you're running a little bit more 11 because you've got more receivers to have out there. And where do you go from there? And then, of course, it brings in the whole situation as well with the running game and everything else. I mean, there's still a lot going on. We can sit there and talk about how Jim Knowles, has only started to crack the defensive playbook. Well, we probably have only seen Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson crack the offensive playbook. Good part of that being because they just have not had the personnel that they expected.
Well, and they still averaged 10 yards of play last week. You had that 40-yard catch after 40-yard catch, essentially, so that you have fewer opportunities to snap the ball because you're getting such huge chunks of yardage. But as we wind this down, unless we got some questions, Kevin, I guess we can go over our specific game previews.
Yeah.
At least the picks. I went 49-10. I think the offense puts it together. I still think there's going to be times where, for whatever reason, they're just not having the ball as much as they have in the past. And, maybe it's going away from the run or, whatever. I just expect that to continue a little bit. Toledo will obviously play well enough to stop them at times. I do expect the offense to look very good in this one. I still think the defense is pretty good. I don't know that Daquan Finn can throw the ball effectively against this defense, and I don't know how well they're going to run it because they don't really have one guy that they can rely on, so I don't know that they know who is their best option, and they may not figure it out until the game is well in hand.
I have 42-20 Ohio State. As I said, I refuse to pick a cover until I see Ohio State cover. I think the Ohio State offense will play much better, but I have an ample amount of respect for the Toledo defense, and I think that that it won't be a case of Ohio State shooting itself in its foot. I think that Toledo will affect Ohio State on some drives with their defense. On the other side, Daquan Finn is a 61% passer this year, which is up from 59 last year. He's very careful with the ball. I mean, he has thrown one interception this season. He threw 2 last year, so I don't expect to see him throw into a lot of traffic there. I think that his legs are the wild card, and that's kind of where the issue is going to be. I think that Ohio State will be aggressive on defense, and that DeQuan Finn will get loose on a couple of sizable runs, and I think that's where some of the points will come from. But don't look at Ohio State, me saying 42, and saying, so you're seeing a downgrade in their offense. No, I'm just seeing an upgrade in a Toledo defense versus what we saw out of Arkansas State.
Yeah, got to tackle DeQuan Finn when he gets out of there. If you're going to come after him, you better bring him down in the backfield when you have an opportunity. And when all of the other defenders have their backs turned, is the worst time to lose contain on the quarterback. So see how that goes. I think that will do it then for us.
Yeah.
I want to thank all of you guys for joining us. Thank you for adding to the chats. Thank you for being respectful to each other and respectful to Kevin as well. So enjoy the game tonight. Enjoy the second half of these games today. And again, we will see you immediately after the game. Not us specifically, but our post game will go live within moments of the end of the game. Lock it in here. Go ahead and hit the bell to be notified when we go live. Mark Gibler, Devin Radcliffe will have the immediate reaction of the game. Then we will toss it over to the post game interviews. Going to be a little bit of a different situation this week with the interviews.
Once again,
things have changed. So we'll see how that goes, but we should have there'll be constant stream of that as well. And then back to Mark and Devin, and then eventually to me and Tom and Kevin to wrap up the evening. Going to be a late night, so buckle in, maybe take a quick nap so that you're there for us, and we'll see you all then. Thanks.